I am not going to be looking at the Discord during all of this fun stuff.
That's fine.
But I want to try something a little different. I did a talk down in Austin, Texas on Zoom, and they told everybody to take their to unmute themselves. So when I get rocking and rolling, if you're in a place that doesn't have like screaming babies or, well, any screaming, babies or otherwise, but if you're in a place where you can have some background noise and not disrupt, just go ahead and unmute. I plan on being like incredibly entertaining. And if I don't hear giggles and laughs, I will get like very sad and I'll quit in the middle of my presentation. And it's not a threat. I just know me, I'm self-aware. And if I can't hear you people, I will probably get bored.
All right.
There we are. So yeah, if you unmute yourself, just give it a little cough, like, and then I know it's happening. Oh, there it is. Look at you guys go. You will notice I do have Baby Yoda coming up on my side over here. I went way overboard on these space memes, and I feel like that's okay. You guys are my people.
Did you run out of space for them?
Ah, we're leading with the space puns already. That's fantastic. Woo. No, I did not. We have plenty of space here, but I will tell you that this talk is going to be out of this world. Okay, so that was a laugh line. Feel free to double test in the mic. That's all right. Let's do this, guys. Okay, so this is a space talk, but it's more than just a space talk. It is a discussion of what does it look like to apply security controls to a brand new industry. And so we're going to do some case studies. We're going to look at some examples, and we're going to talk about the methodology of how do you think about new industries. And I am going to have to turn off this Discord thing because it just keeps going bloop, 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 and I can't take it. Where are you, Discord? I must kill you. All right, let's rock and roll. Okay, so again, disclaimer. My love language is memes. I am going to be going with a lot of memes. That's a good dog. And so let's just get a couple of them out of the way. I like memes that are a little insulting to nerds. This whole Star Wars versus Star Trek thing, I think it's great that we got Spider-Man there in the middle. But this is going to just keep coming. And every once in a while, I might get bored with what I'm talking about, and we're going to have a meme break in the middle of these conversations. So actually, this may not be a cybersecurity space talk. This might just be an excuse for me to share a bunch of memes. I hear that's what social media is for. But let's meet me. Here I am. I did some stuff. What I want you to know about is that I am one of the founders of the field of study called psychological security, where we're more interested in the gray matter between your ears than we're worried about bits and bytes. We believe about, hey, the primary security risk that we need to get better at mitigating and supporting is the human group. I'm acting Chief Information Security Officer for a nonprofit, Space for Humanity. I wrote a bunch of books that even my mother hasn't bought. She bought my first one. She bought the first one. And then she's like, the rest of them are basically you putting a new cover on the same content. And she's right. No one checks. No one reads them. I brokered a deal, the initial deal, where we introduced Virgin Galactic's nonprofit Galactic Unite to Space for Humanity. And that resulted in this guy, Richard Branson, doing something pretty cool, which was he gave 2 tickets on Virgin Galactic away to Space for Humanity. And so Hook Security here is the phishing simulation test for the nonprofit Space for Humanity. And so I count that as a win. I count that as me having a company that is fishing in space, and that I'm now officially a space entrepreneur who snuck in through the cybersecurity supply chain. Okay, that's where we're at. Let's get into it. So you might be wondering why I am talking about security, space, and alcohol. Right. And the punchline is that we're going to cover some out of this world case studies. And my speaker here is going to be Jean-Luc Picard. And he's going to step in a minute on every single one of these slides and tell you how he feels about it. So let's jump into the methodology that I typically follow when I'm trying to apply security controls to an unknown entity or unknown system or new industry. And it really starts with these 6 steps, which is understanding the big picture. If you don't understand the big picture, if you don't understand what you're trying to accomplish, then you're going to be solving problems that may not be actually solving the entire ecosystem that you're looking at. And you're going to leave a lot of security holes behind. So you got to understand the big picture. And then you got to understand the flow of data and value inside of the big picture. I break data and value out into 2 different things. Data is the stuff that we typically are concerned about: data at rest, data in flight, data in use. But I also say value because not all business processes are created equal. And we can experience critical failures in some part of our businesses or organizations that simply just don't matter. And then we have some that really, really matter. So it's not just data and business process, but what's the value of this that is being created inside of our organizations? Then you got to discover logical control points and discover and set policies. This is where most of us really enjoy it. We look at the thing, find out what can possibly go wrong, come up with mitigation strategies, and begin to set policies like thou shall nots. That's where we come up with a lot of that part. And then we design and deploy the security solutions. So not even, it takes us till step 4 before we actually start doing some of our job, which is actually deploying and creating security controls and systems that mitigate the risk. But then we usually stop. So here's my favorite part: is conduct audit and governance activities to make sure that the controls are actually producing desired results, and then establish security culture. Now, some might say you should probably have a security culture at the beginning. And that's probably true. But I didn't remember to put it in until the last part, which is kind of the problem, isn't it? Is that sometimes we do all this other work and we don't say we should start with the security culture. And then you just typically win. Right, John? Sure. Jean-Luc, he's got my back. So we're going to run through a case study of how do you apply those 6 points. And we're going to cover something called beer access management. This is when we wrapped $3 million worth of security software around a kegerator. So here's how we do this. Step 1, you want to understand the big picture. Why are we doing this and what do we look like? This is when you ask your executives or you ask whoever's in charge or the stakeholders to tell you, why are we doing project ABC, or what's the big goal? So the big goal was, let's increase company morale. And the solution to do that was, we should totally install a kegerator. Great. Benefits. Why are we doing this strategy? What does it look like when we have success? Well, we have an average of 2 beers. We'll get the typical cybersecurity nerd into flow state, drastically increasing their productivity and their quality of work. It also lowers their inhibitions, meaning that they'll actually collaborate with other human beings better. However, there are some risks where after 2 beers, you get what we call in a drunk nerd. And the drunk nerd's a special kind of creature where productivity and quality go way down and inhibitions go way down. And then you really begin to hear the nerd's opinions. And that's fine. We're glad they're there, but it is counterproductive to increasing company morale. So how do you mitigate that risk? Well, we thought, what we need to do is we need to mitigate the number of beers, or we got to restrict the number of beers on a period of time to optimal beer capacity for flow state ratio. I really should have a graph. I bet it would be a cool graph. Yeah, cheers. Cheers, buddy.
Cheers.
All right. So case study continued. Now that we understand why we're doing it, what's the flow? What's the data? How do we know where the value is? Well, we got to understand the system. And then we got to understand where we're going to put a control spot. So we found the optimal control system, and spot was at the line between the keg and the actual tap. And we found that we can do role-based liquid flow control based off of a solenoid. So the nerds in my company got together and they installed an electric solenoid inside of the kegerator and attached it to a Raspberry Pi that has an optical sensor. And we were going to use that optical sensor to read a QR code on your phone. So they created back-end code in a database that allows you to check QR codes in and out as the Raspberry Pi was reading the stuff on your phone. Based on the role of the users, the solenoid will be open for a particular amount of time. So if you were the typical nerd in my company, you would get a 12-second pour and we check it twice. But if you're me and you own the company, I wanted unlimited access. I wanted to pour I wanted admin access, root access. I didn't want to be limited because sometimes I'm entertaining and I want to be able to pour beer for whoever I wanted. So again, we wrapped $3 million worth of the IBM software that we were working on and use the back thing for the identity and access management stuff. I'm very happy with it. That's it in practice. You type in your name, you do the thing. And so we went through and we actually created the technology. We rolled out the solutions. But if you see here at the bottom, you shouldn't let the prisoners build the prison. Right. So we were going to turn it into a beer robot and take it to festivals. We were getting super distracted. I would like to point out in the bottom left corner that there is a plastic knife with a zip tie that's used to hold the actual optical reader. We spent a lot of money on the software, just not on the hardware. So let's talk about what we were actually able to do. We deployed everything and theoretically life was good. But then we went into conducting audit and governance activities to make sure we were getting our desired results. And it seemed to work, but after we did pen testing and we tried social engineering, we did all the other things, we found out we failed literally everywhere. We thought we had a cool security solution, but what we did is put security theater in place and not actual real security. Social engineering happened rampant where people would switch and hand out their IDs to each other so that if they were limited to 2 and I don't happen to drink, but you can have mine too. It's just like being at a conference where you have that one person who's always going around collecting everyone's tickets and like, can I have your ticket? Oh, and then they go and they drink all of the IBM beer being at the conference. But the real problem was me. I was the actual one, the one who was getting socially engineered, and they were going after protected. What is it? PAM. It stands for protected or privileged access management, right? So we failed there absolutely everywhere. And the problem is that we didn't actually do a security culture, because if I was the problem and I was the executive, I did leading by example. And the reason why we didn't have a security culture is because my executive staff, which was me, didn't take this thing serious. So I did the only thing I should do, and rather than fix the security problems, I fired HR and removed all policies around alcohol. Yeah, take that. Okay. So where we're at in this whole journey is that was a case study on how we go and look at a new piece of technology or something that is a new industry, and how do you actually go through and think about it. Most of us have done something very, very similar to that. Oh, by the way, this is what we ended up creating. We ended up creating a solution where
I love that meme.
So that's what we built. That's by the way, that's what I like to refer to as security theater, where there's a lot of flashing lights and a lot of stuff and people are behaving in what they think is the right way, but there's actually no contact. There's no actually deterrent, and we don't actually work. But this is, I also call this only doing security for compliance and not actually getting the real job done. But I digress. So let's talk about space. We're going to apply that same methodology, the 6 steps that I talked about, to the overall space industry. And I'm going to dive a little bit more into where the space industry is going, what's actually happening with space. We're going to talk about a couple of high-level hacks that have already happened in space and why they're absolutely ridiculous. And then we're going to talk about what might be next. And finally, I'm going to introduce you to a project I'm launching in April of 2022, where I'm going to put an automated moonshine distillery on the moon. But we'll get to that in just a minute. So here are all the steps, right? Yeah, the risk culture. I should not forget that. That's just a review. That's probably a slide. Hey, take a screenshot if you want. It's cool, but here we go. So the space industry, let's understand the big picture. The goal is to allow humans and their technologies to operate in space, providing digital services, adaptive manufacturing, resource collection, energy generation and distribution, and human experiences. By the way, I'm making all of this up based off my own personal experiences and the effort I've spent in space over the last 12 months. I am going to use some stuff from the Davos conference that I attended, and I'm also going to use some stuff from the governing boards that are doing their best to create the standards, but most of this stuff is my opinion, so take it with a grain of salt. Strategy, build a global supply chain that supports launch capability, research and development, command and control, and platform for delivering product, service, and solutions as outlined by our goals. I feel like I do business talk pretty well. Benefits, space can do a bunch of stuff, primarily a catalyst for new products and services. Risks, but all this new technology is going to be happening without cybersecurity people involved. I was going to say show of hands, but I'm not going to look. Just light coughing. Has anyone ever been a part of a project where somebody really, really smart has created technology or rolled anything out, and then they came to cybersecurity to say, hey, maybe you guys could secure this for us? And then we ended up blowing up their entire budget, and then began to take a whole lot of time, and we missed their timelines, and now no one wants to talk to us at the Christmas party. Anybody? No, just me. That's cool. So how do we mitigate that risk? Well, the thing is that we got to get involved early. And the good news is that the space industry is acting differently. We are being invited into a lot of the conversations around how technology is being done. And we really need to continue that. And by doing that, we're going to be able to we're not going to make the same mistakes we made with the internet, fingers crossed, with the new stuff that we're building. But we need to come prepared. So we also need to understand what kind of security standards and controls we're going to actually request, which means our cybersecurity people have to partner with the space people in order to make this happen. And this is what most people think about space. They think about these three guys riding rockets to space. But I'm about to show you that that is not the case. Launch capability is actually so very, 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 very small compared to the $366 billion global economy. By the way, I think that, 2019, we're actually heading on our way to be over $1 trillion by 2030. And it's not just launch capabilities, and it's not just all of that. It's actually all of the side stuff that gets created. So the effort of going to space creates a bunch of side products and technologies. And all these things have different ways of working with the existing technologies that we have. And every time one of those guys touch base with another one of our existing technologies, we've got to find a way to secure it. And cybersecurity is going to have to jump into this. So as the space industry grows and innovation from the space industry happens, we're going to get a flood of new technologies that's going to require people like us to jump in there and help them figure it out. Hey, good news, there's not a shortage of cybersecurity professionals, and good news, we always get the budget we ask for. So this should be a complete layup. That was sarcasm, but I'm hopeful. Come on, John, we can do this together. We're going to make that thing happen. So how do we go through and change the game? Well, we got to basically jump in at the very beginning. And I love my last bullet point here, if I do say so myself. We need to fundamentally disrupt the way that we create technology in the space industry to make the cyber crime that's so hard to fight right now completely obsolete. And that really starts with partnering with some folks. So one of the things we're working on is some partnerships with the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. We're partnering. When I say we, I mean some of the stuff that I'm working on. We're attempting to build a team that is doing all this. So we've got partnerships with Jet Propulsion Laboratory. We've got some board of advisor members who are helping with, who've actually put devices on asteroids. And we have a flight director for the last 2 Mars rover landings advising us on how to approach the space industry and apply cybersecurity controls to them. And I'm really talking about the gray matter stuff. This is mostly the hook security stuff that I'm talking about. But we need you, right? We need you. And let me tell you why. It's because of the 5% rule. I personally believe that 95% of what's going on in the space industry is exactly what we already have everything for. And it's only 5% different, right? So if you go to automotive, we still have the same 95% of cybersecurity controls we're going to have to put in place, but it's where that new technology is. It's a little bit different. Our proprietary is only for the actual industry is where the rubber hits the road. And so I believe with the innovation coming out of space that we need smart human beings, smart cybersecurity people to get into the early meetings in order to have a voice inside of this 5% of the technology. And it's everywhere. So you got the Raspberry. So let's talk about some hacks. I'm going to go through about 3 of them. We're not going to dive deep into them. And please don't ask me questions about these because all I know is what's on these slides. But if you do ask me a question, I will make stuff up and I will sound confident when I say it. So Raspberry Pi was used to steal data from the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. It was sitting on a normal network and it was just sitting there for 10 months, just sucking stuff off the network and tossing it out through a secure channel, and no one discovered it. It's crazy. Yeah, I know. We're getting sad Picard now. Here's my favorite. This is my absolute favorite. When the International Space Station was still running Windows XP, yes, team, it was running Windows XP. The Russian cosmonauts had a bad habit of just plugging in random USB drives that they brought from Earth into the computers on the International Space Station. And they were carrying malware and viruses and things like that. So for a very long time, we were able to put a human in space, but we still couldn't convince that human not to put an untrusted USB device into a USB drive. I shouldn't laugh, but I find that just like, wow. And I love this last part, right? It's not a frequent occurrence. It's not a frequent occurrence, but it definitely isn't the first time. That's just great. Anyway, good thing lives aren't on the line. The
thing about nickels. What is it? I got a nickel for every time it happened. There's just isn't a lot of nickels, but it's weird. It happened more than once.
That's right. That's right. I got a fistful of nickels. Wait, why do you have a fistful? That doesn't make any sense. That's hilarious. So this one, GPS location hacking and spoofs. This is a thing that's happening. Ghost maps being pushed down. Yeah, that's horrible. Being able to not even have to take control of the device, but take control of the GPS, and the human just follows it on the consumption side. And then on the actual device side, GPS is just so vulnerable, right? This one here is not funny. There was a plane that lost connection to GPS, and these pilots had to land by hand. Like a Boeing 777 is a big bird, and there's a lot of human beings on it. And you don't want 8 minutes before you land, or 8 miles before you land, for you to all of a sudden get taken off your game. And thank goodness these pilots have the right kind of training. But if you can do this kind of stuff, I mean, we're talking serious things here. Yeah, it's super disappointing. So let's jump away from these case studies and let's jump back into what I believe the thing that we can do most in the space industry, which is help with people, processes, and systems. And Jean-Luc is talking about the Force, which is fantastic. So who's currently working on security in space, and what are the standards? So believe it or not, there's a lot of people who are actually doing this kind of stuff. There's a lot of people who are working on it, but no one really has a lead. So Space ISAC is trying very hard to organize all the chaos, but there still isn't someone who's raised their hand and had mass adoptions for all of these different people who are doing the work, right? You would think that maybe the United States Space Force might step in. But I'm going to pause for a moment and just think about what an absolutely missed opportunity to come up with a wicked cool name for a new military. I mean, it's like no one tried. It was like, Space Force. That makes sense. Where should we get a logo? I don't know. What do people recognize? Yeah, right. Maybe don't use Starfleet Command for Space Force. I don't know. It's fine. But the good news is that a lot of these folks are actually trying to work together. And the reason why that's good news is that anybody, including anybody on this call, anybody who's interested, can actually get to work. They can jump into the middle of these conversations. Their arms are wide open for anyone who's willing to spend some time on it. There is a huge shortage of cybersecurity professionals who can think big thoughts in these conversations. And so if you've ever had a desire to work in the space industry, I'm telling you, you're in a great time. You're in a great time. So where do you fit in, right? Well, I think that we are best suited to discover the logical control points in silent systems and policies, meaning that a lot of what we have done in the past is sysadmin work, database work. Like we're all really good at a lot of different parts of how infrastructure connects together, which means that we have a gift at being able to see these different control points that most people might not see. And the way our minds work allow us to go through and advise on how do we set policies. So this means we get to dig into the weeds on how every different part of supply chain, production, and consumption chains work. By the way, this is a lot. This is a whole lot of work, right? You can't just look at the space industry because every company is different, every process is different, and we're going to need thousands, if not tens of thousands of people putting in, hundreds and hundreds of hours to actually make this thing work. And that's why we need everybody to jump in. Like there's lots of really cool people doing case studies on hacking satellites, but satellites are actually my least interesting. They are actually the least thing that is interesting to me, and I'll tell you why in just a moment. So yeah, start thinking space security thoughts and on potential security controls by learning more about how all the different parts work. How do satellites talk to command and control? How do we verify, how do we make sure that the rockets we're launching have the right temperature and heat variance and things like that? There's technology everywhere inside of space. But here's what I wanted you to see. So this is just looking at the satellite industry. Okay, so 237 billion. And you would think that manufacturing and launch would be great. But if you look, that's, 4 billion in manufacturing, 1.3 billion in launch. Where's the real money? The real money is in all of the services that support everything else. By factors of math, it is bigger, right? That is 217 billion in services supporting operations, launch, and manufacturing. That's all the boring stuff. That's the supply chain stuff. That's email. That's all the things, right? And the thing is that's where that 95% is. We can step in immediately and start supporting the space industry by approaching this huge services deficit that they're having and supporting that over there. And that's basically the launch pad, See how I said launch pad with the launch? Anyway, it was a pretty good pun. You guys missed it. And this is how we're going to do it. So here's a tool for you guys. This is a fancy spreadsheet I put together. You don't need to use a fancy spreadsheet. What you need to do is if you're enterprise, there's plenty of data analytic tools out there. But what I want you to be able to do is look at a particular process, which is, how do we do ABC, and then be able to rank it inside of a spreadsheet, get a heat map, and being able to show an executive who has budget a heat map or one picture that enacts change in policy or deploys budget for controls. So I'm going to show you what I mean by that. Does that make sense, by the way? Yeah, I'm going to assume it does. Okay. So let's talk about my Moonshot Moonshine project. And I am 100% serious on trying to put an automated moonshine distillery on the moon that will send me moonshine back from the moon. It's gonna be awesome. All right, here's why we're doing it. I was really getting excited about talking about space manufacturing and the ability to get power and things like that. But as soon as I start talking about the engineering and the science behind what it takes to do adaptive manufacturing and product creation in space, most human beings just gave me a glazed look. So I had to come up with a catchy marketing ploy, which was putting a moonshine distillery on the moon. But while we're doing that is I want to demonstrate our ability to manufacture products on celestial bodies inside of our solar system, leveraging locally found resources for energy and for the manufacturing of those products. And I want to do that all in the eyes from the point of view from a cybersecurity professional, where at the very beginning of this, we are demonstrating the kind of security that you need to have to do commerce in space. So rather than me spending the money to do that, I came up with the idea to crowdfund a prize, like an X Prize or something like that, and have a governing body that has this cash prize. Get engineering schools all over the world to participate in this. And while we're doing it, that governing board would actually hack the crap out of those teams throughout the entire way. We would do nonstop red team activities at these teams to make them learn from the beginning to lock down their stuff. So success is measured by launching a team being able to launch a bottle of moonshine back to Earth, where it is consumed by me on a fancy yacht. It's not enough to bring it back to Earth if I don't drink it on a yacht. So by doing a prize, that'll create a sufficient marketing buzz around the project, and we can educate the world of what are the benefits for offsite manufacturing. And I have this thing where, man, if I can get the engineering, space engineers of the future scared and aware and, with cybersecurity in their blood, then I can change the next 20 years of space, because they'll remember that one time back in college where they were about to win this thing, but then they got hacked. And really solidify these memories and put a security culture in from the beginning. The risk is we're going to be creating the risk because we're going to be disrupting and attacking them. And so they have to incorporate cybersecurity defense measures. But the problem is that no one knows how to do this. So this is when you go into a new industry or a new kind of organization, we don't have all the processes and procedures documented. You have to discover them all. So one of the things you do is you start looking at near industry examples. And so here is how do we explore to find water. By the way, rocket propellant, that's moonshine, baby. That is moonshine. So the exact same process that we're going to follow to do some of this stuff, we can just as easily create moonshine. And by the way, that's how we're getting around some of the alcohol distribution laws on the planet Earth, is we're not sending moonshine back from the moon. We're sending rocket fuel back from the moon. So what else are we going to look at? So like I said, we got to look at something that's similar. So there's already a lot of work done for asteroid mining, and there's already a lot of work done for moonshine distilling. So looking at those two different things, we are able to then find all the different processes that we need to look at to combine. So we have a really good idea of what kind of value chain and data chain we're going to be looking at for the security controls. And I'm going to ask a bunch of questions, right? I'm going to say, give me a list of all the business systems, give me a list of the processes inside of those systems, the business subsystems, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So if I go back, it is this spreadsheet right here, where I'm going to be asking for all of this information so I can do a business continuity heat map and show risk. And that's the boring stuff, guys. This is weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks of work just to get a beginning of the data that we need. And so it's a really, really heavy look. I just thought, so I am a bit dyslexic, and I saw in the bottom right corner list of key stakeholders. And for a split second, I thought I wrote list of key skateboards. And I was like, that wasn't right. Oh, Bacard, you and your funny jokes. He loves this stuff. All right. So then you go into what we already all know how to do, which is running your very straightforward cybersecurity assessment using one of your favorite frameworks. I don't care which one you use. They're all great. I'd rather you be having the conversation with the space people than actually not. And so what I would be doing is attaching some of these frameworks to the development processes of the competition, meaning that these folks, while they're reporting out progress back to us, also are going to have to go through security assessments and all of the best practices that we wish everyone would do. So I'm going to be wrapping up here. The real point of all this was to try to get you excited about space, to get excited about the fact that you have a unique skill set and understanding how everything works together, and that the best thing that you could possibly do is jump in where you see fit and do and help guide them through this and what you need to know before you can help, because sometimes trying to help will hurt people. Before you can help, you have to understand the big picture. You have to understand the flow of the data and the value, discover logical points in the system and set policies, design and deploy security solutions, conduct audit and governance, and establish a security culture. And then again, win. And Picard thinks you can do it. So we're done, team. That was my talk. I'm happy to take some questions. I see that there's some chat going on here, but I'm going to close that up because it wasn't funny. Does anybody have any? You can take yourself off mute, by the way. Go ahead and jump in and say words, because Yeah. Hold on. And if nobody has any questions,
I have a question.
yeah, let's do it.
For a student, no experience, no nothing, still in college, the idea of working with space from a cybersecurity aspect is extremely appealing.
I know, right?
And that is, it's seriously really, really cool. I never thought about it. Where would someone, when you have your entire career in front of you, where do you start if that is appealing to you?
You test the waters there. The space startup field is booming. It's huge. The first thing you do is you volunteer. Like if you're still in school and you're still going, and you probably can say, I've only got 10 hours a week or 10 hours a month that I can help, offer your services to space nonprofits, to space startups, to all those kind of things, and build a bit of a book of business and resume so you can say, yeah, I am in the space industry. I've helped space companies. I understand space culture. Let me, and by the time you're out of school, there you go. You have a start, because it is about who you know, and it's about making those connections. So step up, serve. But there's also a rabid amount of cybersecurity jobs out there inside of the space startup field. Typically, though, these companies are, I don't know enough about that particular field to advise you on that. But what worked for me and how I got into the space industry is I went and I volunteered for a space nonprofit, and that's worked real well for me.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? All right. Well, I had fun. I hope you had fun too.